In October of 2004, as part of our centennial celebration, the U.S. Forest Service hosted a national conference of its earth scientists in San Diego, California. It was an event made remarkable by the collective history of our peers. You could sense the legacy of knowledge and capability extending from the days of Pinchot through the decades, ranks, and regions to the present. But the gathering was also an affirmation of commitment to the work ahead. In the opening keynote, Sandra Postel offered her views on the obstacles and opportunities we face in a water-short world.
Albert Einstein once said something I really like, and he said, you can't solve a problem, particularly a big problem, within the mindset that created the problem. And it seems to me that as a society, the mindset we've had so far is one that basically says, very simplistically, but basically says that rivers and lakes and freshwater ecosystems acquire value only when we tap them or modify them.
Sandra proposed a new paradigm.
The idea is not to allow ecosystems to get only a residual slice of a shrinking pie, whatever happens to be left over, but to proactively say they are delivering goods and services that are of value. We need to proactively allocate water to them, which means, in a sense, setting, we call it a sustainability boundary, some kind of a boundary or cap on the impact that we're having on freshwater ecosystems. And for each of these sustainability boundaries, there's a science component. You know, we need to be able to say, how much water does a river need? What portions, what pieces of the hydrograph in each particular river system are the most important to preserve? Or if it's gone, the most important to try to restore, if we're concerned about species protection and ecological services. A half century ago, Aldo Leopold, who was a 17-year veteran of the U.S. Forest Service, wrote very eloquently, as I'm sure many of you know, about the need for a land ethic. Leopold viewed the extension of ethics to the natural environment as, in his words, an evolutionary possibility and an ecological necessity. And I think this applies to water too. You know, the fact that water is the basis of life, seems to me, lends an ethical dimension to every decision that we make about how to use it and how to manage it. And to me, that is the integrating force. That is really the integrating force that brings the science and the policy and the management of water together.
Deputy Chief Ann Bartuska underlined our deep-rooted affinity for watersheds.
Water was really identified as the reason for, as a principal reason for, the development of the national forests and the fact of the Forest Service coming together.
She challenged us to anticipate and prepare for the future.
One of the things that we've been doing in the R&D community is working with a lot of our partners on what are the big science themes, what are the drivers in terms of where we should be looking ahead so we can have the science to match up where the practitioners are going to be needing science 5-10 years from now.
Anne asked us to pay attention to outreach and partnerships.
Communicate. I know this has come up in various conversations, but the other thing we don't always do well is taking the knowledge that we have, putting it in the hands of people who can use it in a way that they can understand it. And I know that's true for practitioners in the national forest and practitioners of state and private forestry. It's also true for policymakers, and it's true for the general public.
Geologist Fred Swanson reminded us that we have a great deal to communicate.
As physical scientists in general and in the Forest Service, we are the interpreters and keepers of a lot of the history. As our records get longer and our knowledge gets deeper, then life seems to get more complex rather than simpler. We can recognize more human influences in the history of landscapes that we had termed pristine not too many years ago. One thing that's been particularly intriguing in the last 15 years or so has been the dramatic shifts in the dominant issue of the day. Sometimes I feel like I'm getting issue whiplash.
The issues may change, but as Char Miller made clear, our forests have remained a keystone resource throughout America's history.
The United States went from, let's be generous, a 10th rated power in the 1780s to the world's most powerful nation within 140 years. We have an empire, we have a powerful economy, And you can go back through those slides and say, I know how it happened. It's because we had these natural resources, wood most especially, that allowed this transformation to come forward. What's the other way of looking at it? An ecological disaster. Why would the Forest Service take this photograph of Michigan in 1910 or this photograph of Colorado in 1915? The real genius, I think, of Gifford Pinchot was not that he was a forester. He actually wasn't very well trained. But he understood the modern world before it actually becomes the modern world, which is that the camera is more important than anything else. And GIS and all of the things that we have developed since that point are only building on that larger argument, that the visual, the image is very, very powerful. And so he instructed people, as he did himself, carry a camera everywhere. Take these photographs because they become weapons in a larger argument that we need to make with a public that doesn't know why we need to exist.
Char argued that our system of public lands began as a radical notion.
Keep in mind why this is revolutionary. Since 1620, the public domain was something that the government, over time, wanted to get rid of every single acre. And now this generation is saying no. There are some acres that are not going to go down that route, but it turns out, and you won't be surprised by this, the real issue is not managing land, it's managing people.
Paul Barton picked up on this theme in his keynote.
But I'd assert that these census data and forest inventory data show that people are the most forest-dependent species of all.
He urged us to keep track of our priorities.
If you fail to keep forest healthy and diverse, if you fail to protect streams on farmland and erodible soils with trees, if you fail to invest in urban and community forestry. In other words, if you let opportunities, low-cost opportunities for prevention go by, you'll pay an order of magnitude more for restoration and cleanup.
Hi, my name's Forrest Stump.
Of course, the conference had its light notes, too.
It's fun to work on NEPA. It's fun to work on NEPA. The law has nothing that's cool for the team to enjoy, but it's a key part of your employ.
I think the Klamath
Panel presentations and symposia provided a rich range of intergenerational perspectives. Al Todd and Randy Moore applauded the participants and looked to the future.
I've been especially impressed with the quality of all the speakers, the quality of the people here, the information and the research that's been presented, and especially, I think, just the kind of the energy and passion of the people in this room. You know, their love of what they do, their love of the land, and a desire to really do that work. And that's probably the best quality that really says a lot for making me optimistic about the future.
Well, the work that you do is not easy. If it was, we probably would have answered all the questions by now. And we probably wouldn't need you if the job that you do is easy. I'd encourage you to continue to plug along and develop and find the answers to some of these issues, because I think that once you do, it's going to be the cornerstone for how this agency make decisions for many, many years to come.
And Bonnie Ilhart eloquently captured the overall sense of our days together as she said, "It's not what's on the table, it's who's in the chairs."
It's you folks. You took the time out to come here. You came from across the country.
Though we live and work in far-flung places across the wildlands of America, we came together here and formed enduring bonds that will support and enhance our work of stewardship, of caring for the land and serving people.